The ballroom glittered under golden chandeliers, every table draped in silk, every guest dripping with wealth. Cameras flashed as Atlanta's elite gathered for the signing of a billion-dollar merger. Near the stage, a tall, silver-haired man in a custom suit extended his hand to greet the host. But when the black technician standing nearby offered his own, the billionaire froze mid-motion. His smile thinned into something colder. "I don't shake hands with staff," he said, his voice carrying across the hall. Conversations died instantly. A few guests coughed. Others avoided eye contact, pretending they hadn't heard. But the humiliation was sharp, undeniable, hanging in the air like smoke. 10 minutes later, that same billionaire would be on his knees before the very man he just insulted, and it wasn't for the reason you think. If you think you know how this ends, you're wrong. Stay until the end. You won't believe what happened next. His name was Marcus Reed, 38 years old, father to a 7-year-old girl named Layla, who could light up a room with her laugh. When she wasn't in the hospital, Layla had been born with a congenital heart condition, and between the endless checkups, surgeries, and medication, Marcus had learned that sleep was optional when survival wasn't. By day, he worked as a senior maintenance engineer at Harrington Global, a position most people mistook for just the guy who fixes things. By night, he took freelance IT security jobs from his cramped apartment, chasing every extra dollar to keep up with hospital bills. Marcus wasn't flashy. His uniform was clean but faded, his tools organized to perfection. What people didn't notice, what most didn't care to see, was the sharp mind behind the callous hands. He held a degree in computer engineering from Georgia Tech, graduating top of his class. But degrees didn't matter much when you were the wrong color in the wrong room, shaking the wrong hands. The man at the top of Harrington Global was Charles Whitmore III, a billionaire with a name that sounded like old money and a face that never had to stand in a grocery line. His suits were custom from Italy, his shoes worth more than Marcus's monthly rent. Charles believed in two things: image and the unshakable order of society. Staff were staff, executives were executives, and he liked to keep those worlds apart. A handshake to him was an exchange between equals, and he didn't believe Marcus was one. They'd crossed paths before. Marcus had once suggested a more secure server setup during a casual conversation in the elevator. It would have cost the company nothing, but Charles didn't appreciate being advised by someone in overalls. From that day, Marcus noticed the sidelong glances, the clip replies, the subtle reminders to stick to your lane. The irony was at tonight's glittering event. The one filling the ballroom with silk gowns and diamond cufflinks was about security. Harrington Global was about to finalize the largest tech merger in the company's history, a deal that would make headlines around the world. The signing ceremony was set to be live-streamed to investors in 5 countries. One hiccup, one technical failure, and Charles's perfect image would crack. Marcus had been assigned to the event as technical support, a polite way of saying invisible man with a wrench. His job was to make sure the sound systems, lights, and live-stream equipment ran flawlessly. He moved quietly through the venue that afternoon, checking cables, testing feeds, triple-checking backup systems. From the corner of the ballroom, he caught Charles watching him, not with gratitude, but with that same faint look of annoyance, as if Marcus's presence in the room was a smudge on an otherwise perfect painting. "Remember, Reed," Charles had said the day before, voice dripping with condescension. "This event is about precision. Stay in the background. We don't want distractions." Marcus had smiled politely, but inside he couldn't help but wonder how many of the people sipping champagne tonight would ever see the truth, that without people like him, all their glittering towers would crumble. What Marcus didn't know, as he tightened the last bolt on the stage lighting, was that before the night was over, Charles Whitmore would be begging him for help, and the cameras would catch every second. Marcus had been in the ballroom since noon, weaving between tables like a shadow no one wanted to see. He adjusted microphones, rechecked internet connections, and tested the backup generator 3 times. If this event failed, it wouldn't be because he missed something. But to Charles Whitmore, Marcus's presence was more of an inconvenience than a safeguard. At one point, Marcus was crouched under the main stage, securing cables, when Charles walked by with 2 executives in tailored suits. You'd think by now they designed these things so you don't have to have people crawling around like rodents, Charles remarked, his voice loud enough to carry. One of the executives gave an awkward chuckle. Marcus heard every word but stayed silent, finishing the job with steady hands. An hour later, during a sound check, Charles waved him over. "Reed, is this mic working or am I imagining static?" Marcus checked the system quickly. "It's the wireless channel interference, sir." "I can swap, don't explain," Charles cut in, already turning away. "Just fix it. That's what you're here for, isn't it?" In moments like these, Marcus learned long ago to let the insult pass. His mother had always said, "Never wrestle a pig. Son, you both get dirty, but the pig likes it." Instead, he stored these moments away in the quiet vault of his memory. A few feet away, Sharon, the event's head coordinator and one of the few genuinely kind faces in the company, caught his eye. She mouthed, "Don't let him get to you." Marcus gave a faint smile in return. Sharon had always been the type to thank him after a job well done, and he respected her for it. That evening, Layla had called from her hospital bed to wish him luck. "Daddy, are you going to be on TV?" she asked. "Not if I can help it." Marcus laughed. Tonight's about keeping things running smoothly. What he didn't tell her was that he'd packed an emergency laptop with custom diagnostic software he'd built himself. Most of the company's tech crew didn't even know it existed. It was his ace in the hole if things went wrong. By 7 p.m., the ballroom was full. Journalists lined the back wall. Cameras ready. The live stream countdown ticked toward 0. Charles made his entrance like a man walking into his own coronation, stopping to shake hands with investors, pose for photos, and give the kind of tight, controlled smile that said everything was under his command. Marcus noticed a figure lingering near the press section, a woman in her late 30s with a sharp bob haircut and a press badge. She was speaking quietly into a recorder. When Marcus walked by, she glanced at him curious, almost knowing. "You're Marcus Reed, right?" she whispered. "I've heard you're the real brain behind this setup." He shrugged it off. "Just here to keep the lights on." She smirked. "We'll see." Her badge read Rachel Kim, investigative journalist. At 7:15, Charles was on stage, giving a speech about innovation and excellence, when the first sign of trouble appeared. Marcus, stationed near the AV booth, caught a flicker on the live stream feed, a barely noticeable stutter in the video. His trained eye knew it wasn't a glitch. Someone was probing the system. He scanned the network monitor on his backup laptop. A series of unauthorized pings hit the server, testing vulnerabilities. The company's own IT department would take at least 20 minutes to even notice. By then, the stream could crash, or worse, be hijacked. Marcus's mind raced. If the feed failed during this high-profile event, it wouldn't just embarrass Charles. It could spook investors, tank stock prices, and derail the merger entirely. While Marcus monitored the anomaly, Charles stepped off stage for a break. "Reed," he called across the room, "don't wander off. If the champagne runs out, I'm sure you can pour drinks." A couple of nearby staff laughed weakly. Marcus kept his expression neutral, but Sharon muttered under her breath, "One day, he's going to regret talking to you like that." The probing attacks on the server grew more aggressive. Whoever was behind it was good enough to bypass the first layer of defenses. Marcus's fingers itched to deploy his software, but he hesitated. This wasn't his department. Technically, protocol demanded he call IT, wait for approval, but there wasn't time for bureaucracy. He looked up and caught Rachel Kim watching him from across the room. She gave the smallest nod, as if urging him to act. Marcus's decision was made. He plugged his laptop into the network hub behind the AV booth, keeping his movements casual so as not to draw attention. Lines of code filled the screen as his custom program began isolating the intrusion. The feed stabilized, but only for a moment. Whoever was attacking doubled down, launching a burst of corrupted packets that made the preview monitor flicker again. If this continued for another 5 minutes, the entire live stream could go black in front of millions of viewers. And the only person in the room who could stop it was the man Charles refused to shake hands with. The countdown clock above the AV booth hit midnight. Across 5 countries, investor screens lit up with the Harrington Global logo. The ballroom cameras panned smoothly across rows of million-dollar smiles. On stage, Charles Whitmore basked in the spotlight, launching into his carefully rehearsed speech about innovation, excellence, and the future. Marcus stayed near the network hub, eyes darting between the room and his laptop screen. His program held off the intruder's attacks for now, but it was like plugging holes in a sinking ship. The pressure was building. And then it happened. The giant LED screen behind Charles glitched. First a flicker, then a freeze. The live stream feed cut out for a full 3 seconds before snapping back. In the control booth, the official IT tech scrambled, fingers flying across keyboards, voices overlapping in panic. On stage, Charles faltered mid-sentence, glancing toward the AV section with a tight jaw. He kept talking, but his voice carried a new edge. Another flicker, longer this time. Across the world, investors were calling assistance, asking what was wrong. A Japanese news anchor on the live broadcast audibly asked, "Is the feed down?" In the ballroom, Rachel Kim lifted her phone, recording. The IT lead rushed to Charles at the side of the stage, whispering something in his ear. The billionaire's face shifted from irritation to something colder, fear. Whatever the tech had said made the blood drain from his cheeks. "I don't care how you do it, fix it," Charles barked. The lead tech shook his head helplessly. "Sir, it's a target attack. They breached 2 layers of the network. We're minutes away from losing the entire stream." Around them, executives started murmuring, already imagining headlines. Merger signing crashes on live TV. Stocks could tank. Partners could pull out. Years of posturing could be undone in minutes. Then, from somewhere in the huddle, Sharon's voice cut through. "There's one person who can stop this, and he's standing right over there." She tilted her head toward Marcus, who stood at the edge of the ballroom, arms crossed, quietly watching. Charles's gaze followed hers. His jaw tightened. The same man he'd humiliated not even an hour ago. The same man he refused to shake hands with in front of everyone. "I'll get someone else." Charles snapped automatically. "There is no one else," Sharon said flatly, "unless you want every investor in this room to see you fail." The weight of the stairs around them pressed in. Cameras were still rolling. The press was watching. The investors were watching. Charles's ego and his empire were on the line. He exhaled sharply, squared his shoulders, and crossed the room toward Marcus. For a moment, the crowd parted like water, whispers chasing him. Charles stopped in front of Marcus. The 2 men eye to eye. "Mr. Reed," Charles began, his voice low enough for only a few to hear, "I need your help." The words tasted like acid to him. Marcus glanced past him to the frozen investors on the big screen. "Funny," he said evenly. "I thought you didn't shake hands with staff." Charles swallowed hard. "Please, if the stream dies, the deal dies. I can't." Marcus stepped closer, voice just as calm. "If I help you, it's on my terms. I'm not your staff right now. I'm your equal. You'll acknowledge that." The billionaire hesitated, pride warring with desperation. Then, in a moment that would replay in whispers for weeks, Charles lowered himself to one knee. Not an apology, not a humiliation, but to reach under the table where Marcus's laptop was plugged in, his hand extended in a handshake. Cameras clicked. Rachel's phone caught the moment perfectly. The billionaire kneeling to the man he'd dismissed. Marcus took the handshake, his grip steady. "Let's save your empire," he said. With Charles still crouched beside him, Marcus slid into the booth, fingers flying over keys. His custom program roared to life, isolating the attacker's IP, cutting off access point by access point. The flicker on the big screen smoothed out. The feed stabilized. Investors, unaware of the near disaster, kept nodding along to the speech as if nothing had happened. But in that corner of the ballroom, everyone who'd witnessed it knew the truth. The most powerful man in the room had been forced to kneel to the one person he thought was beneath him. Within minutes, the danger was gone. The stream was rock solid. The merger announcement rolled on as if the disaster had never happened. But in the control booth, every tech coordinator and staff member knew who had just saved the night. Marcus disconnected his laptop and leaned back, letting the adrenaline ebb. Charles, still standing nearby, straightened his suit and glanced around, aware of the eyes on him. "Well done," he muttered, voice tight. Marcus didn't reply. He didn't need to. By the end of the evening, investors were congratulating Charles on a flawless event, but the truth had already begun to leak. Rachel Kim's photo, the billionaire kneeling beside Marcus, hit social media before dessert was served. The caption read, "Staff member saves Harrington Global's billion-dollar merger." Within hours, it was trending worldwide. Morning headlines were merciless. Billionaire saved by employee he publicly snubbed. Talk shows replayed the footage on loop. Comment sections exploded with praise for Marcus, calling him the man who kept his dignity, while saving a man who tried to strip it away. By noon, Charles's PR team begged him to make a statement. That afternoon, standing in the same ballroom, he faced a wall of cameras. "Last night, one of our employees demonstrated extraordinary skill and professionalism," he said stiffly. "I owe him my thanks, and more importantly, my respect." He extended his hand to Marcus, this time without hesitation. Cameras flashed. Afterward, Charles pulled Marcus aside. "I'd like to offer you a bonus for your work," he said, naming a figure that would tempt most people. Marcus shook his head. "I don't need a tip, Mr. Whitmore. I need a seat at the table." Charles blinked. "Meaning, make me director of system security?" Marcus said. "Give me the authority to make sure something like last night never happens again, and pay me what the position's worth." It was a bold demand, but Charles, calculating the PR disaster if he refused, extended his hand again. "Done." As Marcus walked out of the ballroom, promotion letter in hand, Sharon caught up to him. "So," she said with a grin, "still just here to keep the lights on?" Marcus smiled. "Maybe, but now I'm the one who decides which switches stay on." 2 months later, Marcus's life looked different in every way. Layla's surgery, long postponed because of cost, was scheduled and fully covered through his new executive health plan. His apartment was replaced with a modest but comfortable house near a park, where he and Layla walked every weekend. At Harrington Global, people who once brushed past him now stopped to greet him by name. The new system security department, his department, was running flawlessly. Even Charles, stripped of some of his arrogance, visited Marcus's office once a week to check in. Their conversations were still formal, but the contempt was gone. At a charity gala that spring, Marcus noticed Charles walking toward a young intern carrying a tray of drinks. This time, instead of ignoring her, Charles smiled and shook her hand before taking a glass. Marcus caught his eye across the room. The billionaire gave a small nod, as if to say he'd learned something worth keeping. One night, tucking Layla into bed, she asked, "Daddy, is it true you made the boss say sorry?" Marcus chuckled. "Something like that, sweetheart. But more important, I made him see me. Because in the end, it was never just about the handshake. True power isn't in refusing a handshake. It's in knowing when to extend one." If this story inspired you, subscribe for more tales where dignity wins, and where the people underestimated the most often have the most to give.